Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Dan Knows Everything About Sports. Today, on this special edition podcast, I will be telling you everything that I know about the U.S. men's national team in the World Cup, whether you want to call it soccer or football. I'm here to tell you everything that I know and why this result that they've come to and why it's really not that shocking if you do watch soccer or football on a whole. And maybe I don't know everything, but I know enough to make my point today. For those of you who are aware, and those of you who aren't, the U.S. men's national soccer team is no longer in the 2026 World Cup, having been eliminated by the Belgian team 4-1 in just a shellacking. Arguably one of the worst performances by a team in this World Cup. And I got to lean a little bit into just the ripping of the U.S. team. I have to rip them a little bit here because over the last couple weeks, we've seen pundits, whether it be on Fox, whether it be whatever your local radio station is, whatever ESPN has been trying to put out there, that the U.S. men's had a chance, a puncher's chance to go deep into this World Cup, this expanded World Cup, this biggest World Cup ever. And I, this entire time, have been non-stop shouting to the heavens to anyone who will listen to me when they ask me about this team. I have been trying to make my point. I was never convinced from the get-go that they would go far in this World Cup. I wasn't. And it has nothing to do with who they were facing. Because if you thought a few years back when Alexi Lawless called out the entire team and got ripped for it, for saying that they were the generation that had been handed the most out of any team, and they were a failure. This team has shown that they are just on par with being average, and they can't compete with the top teams internationally compared to the ones that they were faced, because looking at everything, just looking at the facts and not doing a hot take or gas bagging, they get put in Group D. They get handed, because it's an expanded tournament, and there's going to be more teams than there has ever been in a World Cup. Truly, if you could say it was a World Cup, this World Cup, which has been fantastic to watch, whether you are an American soccer fan or you're an international football fan, this has been so fun to watch because of the expanded field. You have gotten to see a lot of these smaller nations come in and surprise people with their play. Because, and I don't know who said it, but a few years ago, someone pointed this out, and I absolutely agree with this take, which is everyone can play now. This isn't like how it used to be when America hosted the World Cup in 1994. There has been a vast improvement in 30 years across not just USA soccer, but also across the game on a whole internationally. Because like you saw with Cape Verde, what a great story. They're not even a full nation. They're an island archipelago off of the coast of Africa. They're made up of a bunch of small islands. And that team came within just one goal and a few minutes of knocking off one of the, honestly, the betting favorite in this tournament. They took Argentina to extra time. We've seen other smaller nations do that in this tournament. Senegal, the same Belgian team that just destroyed the U.S. 4-1. Senegal was up 2-0 on Belgium. Had they scored another goal, they would have put the nail in the coffin on Belgium, who is the 9th ranked team internationally. They are considered a powerhouse. Even though they have not won a World Cup, they are still considered a hotbed for international football players. And that team almost got beat by Senegal because Africa, and you can look this up, folks, Africa does not have a history of performing well at the World Cup. You've only had 8 nations ever win the World Cup. None of them have been from Africa. None of them have been from North America. It has been nothing but European and South American dominance since the almost 100 years since its inception. And this World Cup, you would think with that many teams added in, the fact that there is, over 60 teams, there was going to be a round of 32, a round that never existed before this World Cup, that America, Mexico, and Canada are all hosting. Most of the pundits lied, in my opinion, to the American fans by trying to say that the United States has a puncher's chance of going deep and possibly winning this thing. I never believed that. I never believed that from the get-go. And it has nothing to do with the fact that I am some genius when it comes to international football or even soccer here domestically in America. I'm not. I'll be the first one to tell you, I truly did not become a fan of this sport until I was in high school. I could care less about soccer or football for the longest time. But once I saw a guy by the name of Ronaldinho play, and then I watched that 2006 World Cup final where France, who should have possibly won that World Cup, ends up losing because Zinedine Zidane can't keep his head to himself and decided to just, politely place it in the general chest region of Materazzi and get sent off in his final international game, which is now deep into the lore of World Cup history. But in the 20 years since I've become a fan, the one thing that has just stayed consistent about the United States team is this. They are mid at best. Mid. They have come great lengths since 1994, and you have to tip your cap to them. But as far as the development goes for what the other nations in this tournament and the nations that will make the final 8 and will comprise the final 4, you will see they have, yes, they have stars. Yes, most of them do. And most of their teams do play at top tier European clubs. That's not to say the Americans don't. They do. Just to put it in perspective, where they have come in the last 30 years. In 1994, when we hosted last time, the United States men's national soccer team, and this is a win, in my opinion, only had one player. One, okay? Thomas Dooley was the only member of the men's national team in 1994 who played top-tier European club football, which is what is considered worldwide as the top of your game. If you are a player playing in La Liga, Serie A, Bundesliga, Premier League, if you're playing in one of those 4 leagues, and I know I'm probably missing a couple of them, but if you're playing in one of those 4 leagues, you are at the top of your game. Only Thomas Dooley in 1994 was, prior to that World Cup, assigned to a top club. Whereas now, we're 30 years later, the United States team, has 18 of their 26 players right now playing in one of those leagues. So they've definitely come a long way in the last 30 years. And I don't think that's anything. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a great improvement, and you should be proud of that. But the fact is, over the last few years, going into this tournament, the notion that they were on par with what Fox Sports right now is trying to push when you're watching the World Cup, it's ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous to think that they are on par with an English team, with even Mexico, a Mexico team that they can't beat, and they just played them within the last 18 months in the Gold Cup and lost. They were the runners up in that tournament. Over the last couple of years, even in their own Gold Cup tournament, they won in 2022, okay? They lost in the semifinals to Panama in 2023. They were the runner-ups last year to Mexico. They somehow got ranked 16th. That was laughable because I could name probably 20 other teams that in a competitive matchup, like in the round of 16, they could beat them. I feel like they're only ranked 16 because that's FIFA's ongoing joke that they can only make it to the round of 16 and lose. Matter of fact, I want to know that in the comments section if you're listening to this. Are the American national team, is the U.S. men's national soccer team only ranked 16th because they keep making it to the round of 16? But prior to this, just looking at the facts, this is why I didn't think they were going to go far, okay? They were 0-4-1 against international teams that were ranked ahead of them prior to this World Cup. That's including friendlies. 0-4-1, 0 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw. And the teams that they lost to in pre-World Cup friendlies, Germany, Portugal, and this Belgian squad that just tore them apart. And a Belgian squad who, again, many people, including Vegas, felt like the U.S. could beat. And the odds-on money favorite going into that match yesterday was the United States. The money was on the US. They felt like they had the younger squad. They felt like, and I heard the criticism, Belgium was long in the tooth. Correct. That is true. They are an older team. But you forget one thing, and that is this. The United States men's national team doesn't have that je ne sais quoi. They don't have that it factor that would have convinced me, someone who was hoping they could surprise people and go far, that they were ever going to compete. I mean, there's nothing they have done since the 2014 World Cup to show me that they can compete with them. 2018, they did not make the World Cup. 2022, they got back in. I made the criticism, and I got lambasted for it with a few of my friends who are much bigger soccer fans than I am, that I was crazy to think that the way that they were playing in international games prior to this World Cup, that if they were not hosting, they probably would barely make the tournament. I didn't think that was a bad take to say because of the way that they were playing. And then you want to bring in the political factor of whether or not there was a red card that got rescinded so that their number one scorer could play. I'm not here to debate that. Other people can go ahead and do it. Listen, if you are just being welcome to the fact that FIFA is the most openly corrupt company in the world, newsflash, they are. And not only are they the most openly corrupt company in the world, they'll gladly tell you that. They do it constantly. Corruption and FIFA go together like peanut butter and jelly, or like the air you breathe in your lungs. This is an organization. They rescinded a red card in this tournament because our president called them and asked them to look into it. That is that's just an open corruption case waiting to happen. Now, had the Americans won, obviously, we'd probably go deeper into that. But that's as far as I'm going into that discussion, because the truth of the matter is I'm not here to discuss politics or the corruption of FIFA or how laughable it is. If you really want a nice joke about how corrupt FIFA is, just Google it. Just Google FIFA corruption, and trust me, the litany of things that will pop up, you will astound you at how staggering some of the things that they felt that they think they could get away with and they did not, and they got caught, But going back to America on a whole here, in their own group, I mean, they were handed everything in this World Cup to go far. And I get they won the first two games in various ways, and people started to get behind the hype. Like, wow, we've got 6 points already. We've already qualified for the knockout round. They were one of the first teams to qualify for the knockout round, and good for them. That is a great thing to build off of. But look who you got placed in a group with, because in this expanded tournament, one of the things that FIFA did away with, because FIFA likes money more so than anything, more than competitiveness and fair game, they like money. They like eyeballs on the TV, and they like money. And what generates more money than a host nation playing against teams that are below them in the rankings so that they can give them an easy path to the knockout round, which is what they ended up drawing. Because in Group D, you had America, Paraguay, Australia, and Turkey. And of all of those teams, outside of America, the highest ranked team was Turkey, and they did not qualify for the knockout round. They were ranked 22nd in the world. Australia was 27th. Paraguay was 41st. And America beat Australia and Paraguay. They did not beat Turkey. And that game was telling. That game was telling to me, because in a game where, yes, you really had nothing to play for other than pride and points, because you're already locked in the number one spot. You're not going to move up. You're not going to move down. But to go out there and have that performance and lose to that team that didn't perform well in this World Cup, and you get beat by them, that is telling to me. Because had they gone out and at least drawn with them or won that game, I probably would have had a difference of opinion going into the Bosnia game, because Bosnia was ranked 61st in the world, made the knockout tournament, and had a puncher's chance of beating the United States. That red card gave them more than 30 minutes of man-up football, and they did nothing with it. America ended up winning, but they struggled to win that game against the, again, 61st ranked team in the world. I don't know. Where do they go from this? Hopefully, in the next 4 years, they develop a few players. They shock people. They make it to the round of 8 at the next World Cup, which is going to be hosted by Spain and Morocco and a host of other nations. Because if you thought this was a World Cup, because this really was the first true World Cup, the most nations involved in it, the most locations, an entire continent hosting. But you also had, going into the next one, it's going to be even more because now you're going to have, again, that 64 team field. You're having 6 different countries host games. It's going to have a more world feel going forward, which is what they want. And they are eventually going to expand the tournament further. They're already in talks about it. They want a true knockout tournament with 64 teams. That is their ultimate goal. They want to have, or 48 teams, I believe is what they're shooting for next, 48 teams in the knockout round. That's their next goal to this. So it's only going to get harder to win a World Cup. And we're going to have more on the World Cup once this round of 16 concludes. And we'll be talking about the final 8 teams and breaking them down. But to think that this United States team was ever going to win, that is literally being sold fool's gold. Because, yes, we have multiple World Cups with the women's team. The reason why we have that is because, unlike most nations, for a long time, we allow the women here to play sports at a professional level. We don't watch it, but we definitely let them play. And that's not a misogynistic joke. Trust me when I say I very much enjoy the women's World Cup team that the Americans produce every 4 years, that we will be producing again in the next 18 months, more so than the men. And it has a lot to do with the fact that our women can play soccer here. Our men, on the other hand, they're mid. They just have been. They have been for the last 30 years. We have not produced a major star. And I know some people in the comment section might rip me and tell me I'm wrong, that, we've had multiple stars, your Tim Howards, your Pulisics. You can go down the list. But we don't have that star threat like some of these bigger teams have. I mean, look at the teams that have already qualified. Spain has Yamal. France has Mbappe. Argentina, they're probably going to go far. I don't know. That game is ongoing right now as we record this, but they've got Messi. I mean, even Portugal had a 40-year-old Ronaldo, and Ronaldo, for all the criticisms he faced, he scored. He got them in positions to win. Now, the one knockout game they won, and this speaks volumes to the American reporting that has just annoyed me. A few days ago, Yahoo Sports should be ashamed of themselves for this headline. Portugal beats Croatia in a very contentious game, and the headline is Ronaldo pushes Portugal past Croatia. He was on the bench when Portugal scored the go-ahead goal. Where did he push? Powerade into the coach's hand? What did he push? The reporting is just wildly all over the place for this men's national team, and it shows the inadequacies of how much we care about this sport. We only care about it every 4 years, and it shows in just some of the takes that some of these teams have. I mean, you have over on ESPN radio, you have a pundit who, I'm not going to name his name, but you have a pundit who's talking about the round of 32 games. And the first thing that comes out of his mouth is, that guy who scored a goal, what's his name? I can't remember. I wasn't really paying attention. Openly says that on air. His job is to watch sports and to watch the biggest sporting event in the world, which is the World Cup. And he couldn't even be bothered to figure out which team he was watching. So to hear those pundits tell you, America's going to win the World Cup. No, we didn't have a puncher's chance. Where we ended up is where I thought we would end up. In the round of 32 playing Bosnia, I thought it was a 50-50 chance if we won that game. And we did. We ended up winning it. But going up against Belgium, I knew we were going to play a top 10 team in the world. And the fact that we had Australia, Paraguay, Turkey, and Bosnia, those were the teams that we played. If anything, that is the equivalent. If you pay attention to college sports, that was the equivalent of tune-up games, realistically. That in those regards, when we're playing those teams, we're Alabama, that's San Jose State. That's what that was. And then we turned into San Jose State going up against Alabama, because that's what that looked like. And I know a lot of people, you can bash me all you want for this. We've been told for 4 years that Pulisic is our number one star on this team. Pulisic touched the ball in the game against Belgium last night where they lost 4-1. I believe he touched the ball 17 times. He turned the ball over 11 of them. He did not play well. Overall, this team did not play well. They just did not show up at all. This was not a good game. And the final goal, the final fourth goal that they conceded to that Belgian squad, that was just disgusting. I mean, the game is over. You're already losing 3-1. And you have two separate, not one, but two separate players turn the ball over within 5 seconds of each other to Belgium. And Lukaku, who is not the player he once was. He's not. He is long in the tooth. He is much older. Lukaku steals the ball off of not one, but two of your players and buries it. Just buries it. He looked 10 years younger in that one play and that one play alone in this World Cup. So where do they go from here? I don't know. Leave your comments down below. I'd love to hear from you about this. But here's my question to you. I'm going to leave you all with this, my final thoughts on the U.S. men's national team. In 4 years from now in 2030, what do they have to do to build, to go and beat these other teams and go deeper and maybe make a final 8 and maybe get into the semis, although that might be pushing it. But just to get into the quarterfinals of the World Cup, what do they need to do to build this team that will build their reputation up like they had in 2002 when they made it out of the 16? What do they need to do? Like, share, and subscribe. And like always, folks, do I know everything? No, but I know enough to make you think.